Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Friday for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great. All right, guys, welcome back. We have got another episode of LLP here dropping for you today, and I hope everybody has had a wonderful week. Oh, man.
It's been a very, very busy week. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there, all of our listeners. Eric, get this. We're currently being listened to in 86 countries around the world. I mean, you guys have been giving us great feedback. We're being listened to in over 86 countries. That's audio only. I'm sure on YouTube it's probably even more. But I just want to say thanks, guys. You guys have been absolutely amazing. And it just goes to show you that freedom lives all across the world. And I heard a quote one time from somebody sitting next to me that said, there's Americans all over the world. They just haven't made it home yet.
Man, that hits home for sure, man.
Yeah.
You know, so we got a great podcast today, and those of you who are tuning in here on YouTube, thank you for tuning back in. We do post these over on the Iraq Veteran 8888 YouTube channel as well, and it's worth noting that we are going to be covering some stuff today that you can find some really useful videos on our channel related to a lot of this stuff that will help kind of bring home some of the stuff we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely.
Before we get started with today's podcast, I'd like to thank our friends at My Patriot Supply for supporting LLP. In the coming years, things are going to be getting really crazy. Are you ready? Do you have a plan in case of food shortages, power outages, emergency evacuations? You should always prepare before these things strike. That's why we recommend getting your emergency food from My Patriot Supply. They're America's #1 preparedness company with several million happy, well-prepared customers. Their food lasts up to 25 years in storage. It's like a survival insurance policy that you can eat. When you need it, it will be there. Right now, you'll save $100 on a 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Go to the link below or go to www.mypatriotsupply.com/LLP. You'll receive a $100 discount off a 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Check them out and tell them we sent you. Today's episode is going to be the great caliber debate.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one.
And we're talking, really about defensive calibers. I mean, it seems like everyone is sort of in their own little school of thought in terms of, oh, well, the cartridge I carry is better than yours. And there's always this pissing match, right, that occurs.
Right.
Oh, well, a 22 won't hurt anybody. Or, oh, well, a 9mm might expand, but a 45 don't shrink, boy. Like that.
Yep.
2 world wars, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
All these terms get thrown around, and when it comes to different selections of not only the caliber you choose to protect yourself with, but then the firearms and the different platforms that those calibers are used in, there's a ton of variety out there, and it can really be confusing to a lot of folks, especially, it's worth noting and giving a quick shout out to all the new gun owners out there. It can be confusing, right? When you're new to the gun industry, imagine looking at all of the plethora of different options that are out there and not knowing, well, what does this mean? What does, even knowing that there is a difference between, different cartridges and different types of ammunition, different propellants, and all of the different minutia and all the random facts that go into what make up a cartridge and really what give you this sort of song and dance of ballistics, both interior and exterior ballistics, and what bullets do when they hit things and how they react. And not all cartridges are created equal, and we'll sort of go over a little bit of that. But people do tend to kind of have almost a big brother aspect to their favorite cartridge, right? Their favorite cartridge can do no wrong, and yours is not as good. And it's almost like they just take a little bit of a personal approach to kind of claiming a certain cartridge that they really like.
I would 100% agree. And a lot of it comes from, when people first get into firearms, they pick something that fits their hand and it feels comfortable in their hand. And they're not necessarily going off of, what caliber bullet they're going to be shooting. But also they shoot what their friends shoot. So if you have a bunch of friends that shoot 9mm, then it's going to be more advantageous for you to shoot 9mm because everybody's going to be shooting the same ammo. also it comes down to price point. I mean, if you start looking for ammo and you're shopping for ammo online, because most of us are informed consumers, we can go online, we can look up ammo prices. And when you look at a box of 9mm versus a box of like 45, you're like, well, gee golly, that 9mm is, significantly less expensive, and I can't even find 45. So that does play something into it. But also, people just don't shoot a lot of ammo. Like, honestly, there's some guns that'll shoot like a 45 that are actually smoother than like a 9mm plus P load, and they're not giving that opportunity to go to the range and rent that gun and try it out for themselves. And, anytime I'm buying something, if I'm buying a car, you better believe I'm driving every single car on that lot. That's an investment. Like, I'm going to buy it. I want to test. I want to make sure that that's the car for me. But for some reason, guns don't get the same, they don't get that same mentality. They're like, oh, I just want that one. It looks good.
And it is worth noting that a lot of ranges will, they do typically have a gun rental program. You can go in and rent, you may not be able to rent every random gun that there is, but you can certainly, get into the usual suspects and some of the, most common things you're going to encounter out there. So let's just say that your internal conflict is, all right, do I need to buy an M&P, Smith & Wesson M&P or a Glock, right? Maybe that is just a very simple internal conflict for you. They're both striker fire, they're both polymer, plastic fantastic, they both do their thing, but which one do you like more? So going to a range and renting a gun is a great option for those of you that might want to be able to try something out before you buy it. And that can also come into the caliber debate, right? Say that your friend told you, well, you need to go buy a 40 Smith & Wesson or you need to go buy a 10mm. It's not that our friends are trying to give us bad advice or give you bad advice, but that may not be the best thing for you. You might not like it, right? 40 can be a little snappy. 10mm can certainly be snappy. It may not be the best cartridge for every single person in every single situation. Not to mention the fiscal reality that comes into play that, yes, certain cartridges do represent not only a higher price point to shoot them on a regular basis, but also availability, right? Right now, ammo availability has been really terrible. So, you may not go into your local gun shop and find 357 SIG. You might not find 10mm in a wide variety of different combat loads, right?
It is getting better, though. It is getting better.
It is getting better, but generally what people choose for a defensive cartridge might come down to availability. It might come down to price. And for some, it may come down to practicality. Chad and I have done a couple of videos that we call a perfect pairs, where we discuss like a PCC and a pistol that might share the same magazine, right? So in that case, you wouldn't have a carry gun in 45 ACP and then turn around and buy a 9mm PCC. If those were the only two pistols you had, well, then it might behoove you to choose a PCC and a pistol that use the same magazine and shoot the same cartridge.
Ideally.
So those might be some considerations to kind of take into account.
You don't want the Scorpion and carry a Glock, because then you're kind of stuck with this Scorpion that only takes Scorpion mags, and then a Glock that you have a 32 rounder, but it won't fit into the Scorpion unless you have the lower that accepts Glock mags.
Yeah, I mean, and that may not even be a thing. I'm not sure. I don't know if somebody makes a Glock fed lower for the Scorpion.
Somebody
if they
out
don't,
there
they
has
need
to.
to.
Yeah, somebody
that's
out
a great
there
idea.
Make that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea for sure.
But
if that's not a thing, it needs to be.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from bias of the actual counter, the person at the sales counter. I mean, how many times have we heard it? You walk in there and you're like, oh, they size you up. Oh, you're a woman, or you're a small frame man, or a large frame man. You need this. Like, you shouldn't base your caliber decision off of the size. It's more about what's practical for you, what you're using it for, home defense. If the guy in there recommends a 500 Magnum, then you should probably just leave. Okay, just turn around and walk out the door. It has its place, but it's probably not your first choice.
So just to kind of help put this in perspective, not only for, this portion would be primarily for folks that are really, really new. I know we've got a lot of new gun owners out there, and we want to do everything we can to help educate those folks and get them the information they need to succeed in life and succeed in their needs, their self-defense needs. So why don't we talk a little bit about cartridge energy real briefly here. And what we have here is just a bit of it. We've got some ballistics charts pulled up. that give us some basic energy calculations. Now, this is super, super elementary. We're not going to go into a lot of detail here, but this is to put a number, if you will, and associate it with each cartridge, all right? So when a cartridge develops a certain amount of foot-pounds of energy, you have a calculation essentially that involves the weight of the projectile and how fast it's moving. Very simple, right? You know, the heavier the projectile and the faster moving it's going, the more energy you get. Right? The lighter the projectile, the faster it needs to be moving to generate the same energy that a heavier projectile would generate moving slower.
And if you're asking yourself, how do I know the weight? Look on the outside of the box. You'll see it, 115, 147. You know, if you're getting into rifle cartridges, like 180s, 185s. On some ARs, like 55s, 60s. So it'll say it on the outside of the box, like what that weight is.
Right. So that grain is what that refers to is the weight of the projectile. Correct. And not to nerd out, but so there's 7,000 grains in a pound. Okay, so when we say let's just say a 62 grain AR-15 projectile, for instance. All right. Well, how many AR-15 projectiles would it take to get to a pound? Well, you simply take 7,000 and divide by 62.
That's right.
Right. So 7,000 grains in a pound. Grains are the unit of measurement that we use to determine everything in reloading, right? When it comes to weighing your powder, your projectiles, even your cases, it's all done in grains. And it's pretty precise because there's 7,000 grains in a pound.
And typically, the higher the grain, the slower the round, the lighter the grain, the weight of the bullet, the faster the round. So,
all right, so how do we correlate this data, right? So what we'll do is we'll give you two extremes. We're going to start with 22 long rifle. All right, a cartridge that many would consider to not be a viable self-defense cartridge. However, all right, you look at the new Federal Punch round, okay, and there are companies that are releasing what they tout as being an actual good defensive 22 long rifle round that they sort of, tout as being for that application. So that's one of the gripes. You hear a lot of people say, well, 22 won't hurt anyone. It's not deadly and all this stuff. But when you look at, shooting data and you look at the people that are going to the hospital or the morgue from gunshot wounds,
the morgue,
a lot of folks get injured and killed with 22 long rifle. Well, why is that? Why would that be, right? Why would 22 kill so many people? It's common.
Very common.
That's why.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 22s out there.
Absolutely.
So the chance of someone grabbing just the first thing that happened to have a 22 behind the door to defend themselves with, you're going to have that common availability of 22 caliber firearms. So that's why there's so much more data to help correlate like how effective it is.
Yeah. That and there's just at the price point. You can get a 22 rifle for significantly less than you can buy a handgun. So that's why you have so many. I mean, when I was growing up, we had, my family didn't own them. My friend's family would have, he's like, 10, 11 years old, and he had a breakdown 22, and we'd go to the creek and we'd shoot snakes with the 22. We're like 10 years old. And I mean, it was normal. Like that was a normal thing. You're like, oh, let's go find snakes. And then I remember one time we were out there and the police was coming down the embankment, and we looked back and he's coming down. He goes, hey, what are you kids doing? And we're like, oh, we're just shooting snakes. He's like, all right. He just turns around and walks back up the bank. And I mean, it was just, well, this is like rural Georgia and South Carolina, so that might have been a thing. But
yeah.
I mean,
of course.
Yeah, I mean, they're prevalent. They're everywhere.
So let's break down the numbers between a 22 and something a little bit heavier medicine, just to give you a bit of a range, if you will. So we have a number to kind of place with what these cartridges are doing, and that'll help you visualize and quantify what we're talking about a little bit. Okay, so a 40 grain CCI Velocitor. Now this is a little bit on the hotter end for a 22 long rifle, but this is a pretty good result here. That 40 grain bullet is moving 1,435 feet per second, generating 1,084 foot-pounds. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's velocity. Oh no, that would be a lot. That'd be a lot of foot-pounds. I'm sorry. That was the 100-yard velocity. At the muzzle, it's going 1,435 feet per second, and at the muzzle, it generates 183 foot-pounds of energy. All right, keep that. So, if we will, perhaps, just say that 22 long rifle, 183 foot-pounds, and that's kind of near the top end. That's getting on up there in terms of energy. let's compare it to 45 ACP. Okay.
Oh, the old football.
45 ACP, 230 grain 45 ACP moving at a plus P speed of 950 feet per second generates 461 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. All right. So when you start to kind of compare these numbers, well, 45 is a big old huge slug. It weighs, I mean, gosh, you're talking that's 5 times the weight of a 22. But then you've also got a considerable amount of energy there. Now, is it to say that 461 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle out of the 45 is so much more powerful because it's a bigger bullet or anything compared to the 22? I think when you look at the 22 and consider that little 40 grain bullet at the muzzle has still got, let me get back to it, 183 foot-pounds of energy. So is that to say that 45 is amazing because of the power is so much more than 22, or that 22 is amazing because it even gets close, anywhere, even remotely close to the amount of power that a 45 ACP will develop? Let's compare 22 to one of the most popular carry rounds in America right now is 9mm.
Yep.
All right.
Probably de facto, number one round.
Let's look at 9mm. Okay. Now 9mm is kind of the Goldilocks zone, right? It doesn't weigh as much as the 45 ACP. It's not as light as the 22, and the speeds, are kind of similar to the 22. So let's crunch these numbers. Standard velocity, 124 grain, 9mm, moving at 1,126 feet per second.
Yep.
You're getting 351 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle.
I'll take that all day.
Right. But when you think, people tend to go, oh, a 22 is not deadly, or you shouldn't carry a 22 for self-defense, but that's only about double the power of a 22.
And I guarantee you can hit the target much more with a 22 in rapid succession than you can with that 9mm. I mean, just in comparison, when you have that full auto, like 22 AR, and you unleash like 50 rounds from that drum, you can put all 50 rounds into the head of a silhouette, like no problem. Like you just you can draw a smiley face with that thing. And I mean, it's like, that's ridiculous. It's like so accurate.
So when you compare those numbers, you probably think, well, wow, that's a pretty good case for 22, but it's also a good case for 45 ACP. It's a great case for 9mm. We're making a good case here. Not necessarily where the buck stops, okay? Because then you've got penetrating capabilities, weight retention.
Right.
So the heavier projectiles tend to penetrate a little more straight line and have deeper penetration, whereby a 22 might have a little more limited penetration compared to like 9mm or 45 ACP. So that, and also if you're shooting barriers or auto glass or shooting through clothing and things like that, then that's where things start to get complicated.
Oh yeah.
So it's not just the fiscal, or let's just say the ballistician in us, ballistician, whatever we want to say, the scientist in us, if I can choose my words correctly. If we're just looking at this strictly from a standpoint of data and what these bullets are doing when they leave barrels and how fast they're moving and the energy they're developing, sure, you could look at that and go, well, 22 is not so bad, right? I mean, it's getting some decent energy, right? But then when you start shooting through auto glass and clothing and barriers and things, that's where things really start to get interesting, especially with pistol rounds, because they don't all do the same thing and act the same way in all of those situations. 45 ACP arguably does exceptionally well in auto glass compared to all the other things that we talked about so far. So some cartridges will do a little bit better in auto glass, some will perform a little bit better in drywall, and then that's where you also get into the type of situation where these modern propellants that we have access to now, powder technology's gotten a lot better. So this isn't just your old, 45 or 9mm from World War I or World War II. I mean, we're certainly getting into higher performance. We have better performing bullets now. The design of the projectile plays a huge, huge role in what these cartridges will do in a defensive situation, how they'll do in barriers, in some cases how they'll perform in soft body armor, for instance.
Right.
So the projectile design starts to come into play. And we can kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and before we go any further on the, we're about to, move on from 22. So if you guys haven't already, go check out our friend 22 Plinkster. He actually has a video on that 22 punch, and he compares all the different 22 like LR, Magnum, all of that for viability and concealed carry. He does a pretty good roundup of what that round can do, and it actually performed quite well. I mean, I think there is a stigma around carrying 22 as a EDC. I'm not sold on it. Will it work? Absolutely. The metallurgy is there. They've come a long way. Propellants, bullet shape, diameter. You can kind of cheat the numbers. It's still a 22, but it's like a large 22. Like there's still some wiggle room there. But just, if you're going to do it, make sure you choose a 22 that's not a remanufactured, 22. Make sure it's something that has a quality like a punch or something, something specifically made for self-defense.
Yeah. I mean, and I think before we go too much further on this caliber debate, we probably want to also mention too that, look, shot placement's critical, right? It doesn't matter what cartridge you carry. You should always make sure that you are, applying proper shot placement and really good marksmanship in what you're trying to deal with. I mean, you wouldn't go hunting, right, for whitetail deer and carry a 4-bore African big game hunting rifle and then squeeze off a shot and shoot the deer in the leg, right? Or not make a lethal shot. Like, you want to make a humane shot on an animal when you're hunting, right? Now, I'm certainly not comparing defensive situations and potentially shooting another human being to hunting, but that same principle still comes into play, right? I mean, the term organism, we are comprised of organs. We are a sack of meat that is driven by organs and driven by all of these parts. And if you don't poke holes in the critical parts, the sack of meat will not stop.
Being held together by a waterproof barrier.
That's right. And it doesn't matter if you're talking shooting whitetail deer or bear or potentially two-legged game. Shot placement will always be the end-all, do-all to any situation. So if you do choose to use a 22 for self-defense, I mean, obviously make sure that you apply judicious marksmanship and know where to shoot.
Like in the face.
Yeah. All right. So people get spun up a lot on this whole thing. They get spun up a lot about, well, a 22 won't hurt anyone. I think we've determined that 22 certainly has come a long way since it was first developed. And with companies like Federal and their punch, they're doing a great job of trying to sort of bring that 22 to the defensive realm a little bit more. And not to say that companies haven't done it before, because, I mean, CCI has had their Stinger round out for a long time. And the Stinger round, let's just compare that data real quick when I'm talking about.
The Stanger.
The Stanger. The Stinger is 32 grains, and they are moving at the muzzle at a whopping 1,640 feet per second.
That's fast.
Right. And that is yielding 191 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle.
That'll leave a sting.
That's for a 22, that's some pretty stiff medicine. I mean, that's you don't want to play around with that. So 9mm has come a long way, and I know that a lot of folks, especially if you've either been in law enforcement over the years, or a lot of folks that are law enforcement, or if you're just a person that's done a lot of research on shootings and stuff and have really dove into a lot of the data on law enforcement shootings, 40 caliber and 9mm are a couple of calibers that really get pitted against each other a heck of a lot. And what do you see right now? Right? Lots of law enforcement agencies are switching back to 9mm.
Right.
But there was a long time there, and there still are many, many, many law enforcement officers out on the street now. They're carrying 40 Smith & Wesson. But there was a time when 40 was kind of the standard, and lots of police, I mean, we're talking a huge amount of data was trickling in from all of these officer-involved shootings that were occurring. And it was really painting a really strange picture about 40 cal, because 40 cal was performing quite well in shootings, right? When we're talking defensive shootings. Now, we're not going to get into the minutia of, we're just going to say officer-involved shooting. We're not going to say whether or not that was a justified.
Justified or
Yeah,
not,
we're,
yeah.
we're not getting into the justification of it. All we're looking at here is the data and what happened, right? Did the person die? Did they succumb to their injuries? Did they recover? Did the officer involved in the shooting survive the gunfight? The data. That's all we really care about here. Is just the facts, right? And for a long time, 40 cal got a really good reputation and still has a reputation as probably one of the best one-shot stops on the street.
Unarmored assailants or whatever it is, because I think that 40 cal was a really good round before body armor became a regular thing. And when you start getting up into these heavier bullet weights, it really slows that projectile down. It's a heavier mass. It cannot move as fast coming out of the same barrel and the same chambering. So as body armor became more prevalent, you're starting to see these weapons not perform as well because they're not really taking shot placement. They're like, oh, just shoot center mass. Well, what's center mass? Level 3A body armor. So, I mean, you're taking it to the chest, guys, rolling around. He's getting up, he's returning fire. But when you start getting down into the 9mm, you're able to do a little bit better shot placement. You have better follow-up shots. I mean, it's not as, it's not a wrist breaker for some people.
That's right.
So I think that played into it. And that's why you're starting to see people go back down to the 9mm from that 40 is because body armor is a thing now. Like, it's very easy to get, and it should be. But at the same time, like it wasn't an issue back in like the 80s and the 90s.
I think that there's a couple of very distinctive reasons why law enforcement agencies have decided to go back to 9mm from the 40 cal. One, training cost. 9mm is considerably cheaper for departments to buy, so they can buy larger quantities of it. They can save money. Quite frankly, it just costs less money to buy 9mm than it does for 40 Smith & Wesson. I think the other reason is because of the myriad of different projectile choices for 9mm. There's a ton of different weights, a ton of different projectile designs, tons of different carry ammo. So there's a lot of options there for these departments to do. And we're not talking strictly just law enforcement. This is a civilian world too. This is you. Everyone has access to great ammo for 9mm, right? Whether you're civilian or law enforcement is irrelevant, but we're talking about law enforcement in terms of the 40 caliber part of this, because that's where a lot of that data comes from, is from the law enforcement, the officer involved shooting. So I'm mentioning the departments just to maybe help you understand why they go this route, right? Well, you can also carry a lot more ammo for the same weight, right? So if weight is a consideration. A duty belt begins to get pretty heavy. A competitor's belt starts to get pretty heavy. So you can carry more ammunition carrying a 9mm. Also, magazine capacity is generally a little more generous.
Yep.
In a 9mm compared to a 40 across the board overall. Okay, so you get a few more shots, which is always good. And then to segue to your points, absolutely. Fast follow-up shots, more accurate 40 cal is accurate.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. But yes, when you get certain groups of folks, maybe someone's smaller statured, maybe they don't have the same amount of hand strength.
Recoil sensitive.
Maybe they're recoil sensitive. Maybe they just don't shoot enough to be really proficient with a 40, because it does require a little bit more skill and time to really get behind one really well if you're not a gun person.
It's a heavier gun.
It's a heavier gun. So, that the 9mm does help bring home a lot of those different aspects and make it a little bit easier for the average person to get behind a gun and get really proficient with it, and in a much quicker amount of time. To segue back to the 22, use your 22s generally to train.
That's right.
And to get more trigger time. You can work on those fundamentals. Then you step up and run you a couple of boxes of 9mm and get yourself kind of in that mindset of, feeling that little bit of extra recoil. I believe strongly in having a pistol chambered in 22 for training purposes, because you just shoot more. It encourages you to shoot more, and you save money.
And it's pleasant. Like 100%, it's pleasant. There is zero hesitancy on pulling the trigger on a 22. You're not worried about any type of recoil. You're not worried about the noise. Even, when you suppress a 22, it's non-existent. The sound is non-existent. Even with it just without a can, it's still not bad. Yes, you want to wear ears, but it's not beating your brains in, even on the indoor range.
Yeah.
So you can get out there, you can get the reps in. Lots of the 22s, like the trainers, will come as a 1-to-1 size of the duty pistol. I know FN just had theirs come out, and it was like a 1-to-1 of their 45 tactical, but it's the 22 version. It's a 509.
The 509.
Yeah, 509T for trainer. But yeah, I mean, you can get those. It gives you that manual of arms, gives you the muscle memory, and pleasant to shoot. And then you can go back out and practice with your 9mm, when you feel more comfortable with it, or you actually get the time to. Because sometimes you can go out, depending on where you live, you can just go and practice in your backyard with a 22. It's not that bad. Now you start letting off 40, 9mm, 45, your neighbors might have something to say. They might be giving you a call.
It's so interesting to see how things have changed so much over the years when it comes to not only the defensive cartridges that civilians choose, but the military as well, right? So we talked a little bit about law enforcement, and it's actually a very interesting story how the 40 Smith & Wesson even came to be in the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
Wasn't that the
some of the smaller statured FBI agents and people like that, they couldn't qualify with 10 millimeters. They were running the full bore 10s, and some of the smaller statured folks or people that just weren't quite as experienced at gun handling were having a hard time qualifying with it. So they made this 40 Smith & Wesson as a kind of a compromise in power to kind of help reduce a little bit of the recoil, make the ammo lighter, hopefully make the guns a bit lighter, make them kick a little bit less, so that law enforcement agencies and civilians alike would have a 10 bore, or let's just say a 40 Smith & Wesson could be 10 millimeter short and wimpy.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we say. So it's interesting to see they go from 10 millimeter to 40 Smith & Wesson and all the way back to the 9 millimeter that we've had all along.
Well, and that just speaks to the innovations in powders and metallurgy, that you're able to get that same performance out of a smaller diameter bullet without having to go up because I mean, that's like the old 45 long Colt or the Magnum cartridges that used to be the thing because they didn't have the knowledge and all that. So they just increased the cartridge size to get a more powerful round, versus now we have much more expansive powders. They're faster, hotter. It's just, we come full circle.
It is crazy too. I mean, when you look at people like Elmer Keith. So back in the day, Elmer Keith was taking 44 special revolvers and he was ponying them out to the gills. I'm talking, he would try to cram every little bit of extra powder in there, and he would try to get the maximum amount of performance out of a 44 special that he possibly could. And he blew up a few guns doing it.
I believe it.
So Smith & Wesson finally was like, look, we need to make a gun strong enough for Elmer. So that's how the 44 Magnum came about, because of people pushing the envelope and trying to get that extra bit of power and that extra performance. Now, Elmer Keith obviously was a legend in his time and is till this day. I mean, he was a great pistol marksman, awesome. I mean, just such an amazing outdoorsman. We could go into a lot of detail about Elmer Keith and his life, but to say that the civilian world equally pushes the development of cartridges and everything, and the development of the way we approach carry guns and hunting pistols. Like, you've got this Performance Center 44 Magnum here. So
I love it.
Elmer Keith would have probably been very excited to have something like that back then. Now,
hell, I'm excited about that, man.
As needs change, so does the technology to help take care of those needs. I mean, innovation, right, is what fuels, or necessity fuels innovation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So
you see that even on the rifles.
He needed a gun that could handle what he was trying to do. He knew what he was trying to do. The gun didn't exist yet.
Yeah. Well, it's the next obvious step for when that technology doesn't exist, is to make it bigger. So you saw that with the 300 Winchester Magnum. You saw that with the 338 Lapua Magnum. Like, you want that little bit of extra performance out of it. Instead of going wider, you go longer and you inch out some more performance. And that, I mean, I haven't seen it on handgun ammo since, the revolvers. I mean, because of the magazines, the way they're set up, you're not going to be like, 9mm Magnum. It's like it won't fit. Like,
well, Hornady released their Superformance powders, and Hornady also came up with a projectile their FTX projectile that has that
Yes.
flex tip.
Yep.
So there for a long time, the issue with, like, for instance, like a lever action rifle, you can't put a Spitzer bullet in a lever action
Well, yeah.
because the recoil forces,
You'll have a
all those cartridges
day.
being stacked up on each other, that could be disastrous.
It'd be full auto.
Oh, that would be bad. Yeah, if those cartridges detonated in that tube, it'd be a very bad day. So it was smart on Hornady to develop that flex tip so
Yep.
that you could still get a Spitzer-shaped bullet and get better ballistic coefficient and better long-range performance and less bullet drop. So there's lots of things like that where these innovations are just fueled by these, necessities that shooters come up with, and they want that little bit of extra range, that little bit of extra power. And the propellants are a huge proponent of that, right? Like, there's been a lot of advancements in propellant technology, like their superformance powders and things like that. What was it? The 223 BFR. There was a few other powders that were developed around that same time that they can really, get that performance level up where you want it. And what I find odd, right? Look at the 6mm arc. So you could get into the caliber debate of like 5.56 versus 6.5 Grendel versus 6mm arc, right? And you compare those things. And when you go back and look at the, these small bore rifle cartridges, especially in a military environment, right? Look back all the way to Vietnam, where soldiers were going, oh, there's no way this little small bore bullet's going to hurt anyone, because you're walking around with an M14 in 7.62 by 51. You're like, this is. I mean, you see the bullets bigger. You're like, well, man, this is awesome.
Full auto.
Yeah. So, and then when someone hands you a plastic rifle that shoots a little high power 22, you're thinking, well, what is this crap? This ain't going to hurt nobody. But it's the perception that because it's smaller, that it's somehow not as good as the other cartridge.
Well, they learned the hard way that is a very capable cartridge. The weapon system had some quirks that they had to work out, but the actual cartridge fared very well, in that environment. I think it got the job done for sure.
And I think it sort of, without getting too much on this particular tangent, I think it also allowed the soldier to carry more ammunition. The ammo was lighter.
For sure.
I mean, less recoil. So in full auto, you can control it easier.
Think about how many rounds we carried when we were overseas, man. Standard combat load, 360, 380 rounds. And I mean, imagine trying to do that with even 7.62 by, what was it? No, we carried the 7.62 by 54s. And I mean, just belted. That thing's it's a beast, man. Then imagine trying to carry 7.62 by 39, 400 rounds of that. Get out,
yeah,
man.
And those mags are kind of, the
well,
curved
they're
mags
wonky,
are a little
man.
bit kind of a weird shape.
Yeah.
So the point I was trying to make, though, when I mentioned that, like the increased technology when it comes to like projectile designs and propellants and things like that, is you look at that 6mm arc, and that is one awesome bullet. Like it really does some awesome things, right? And you think, well, 6mm, what the heck is this crap? You look back at the Lee Navy that was issued by the United States Navy. Mm-hmm. We had a 6mm rifle back in the 1800s. I think it was issued around like the late 1899 or so, or something like that. So like right around the turn of the century, we almost had the perfect concept.
Yeah.
We sort of had the concept going, but I think again, the perception, right, was that, oh, this little bullet ain't going to hurt nothing. I mean, you got to think the people were coming off of, big bore black powder stuff. And, obviously, I mean, how could that little pill do anything that this big one won't do?
Mm-hmm. They're shooting like 64 caliber balls and stuff. So they're used to seeing these monster projectiles versus little 6mm.
That's right. So they had the right idea. It's just the implementation. It just took a little while for it to come full circle. I mean, look at 6mm Creedmoor and look at 6mm arc. I mean, those cartridges realize the full potential of their action lengths, and they have great downrange performance, good ballistic coefficients on the projectiles. The powders obviously are excellent, so really good performance. You're getting great velocity with, a minimal amount of pressure, to try to keep those pressure curves under control, right? That tends to be the issue. When you're loading something really hot in a hand loading situation, sure, you can get that bit of extra velocity, but when you reach those pressure nodes that can be a little bit spotty or dangerous, then you start to have, sticky extraction, you have cratering primers, you have really bad wear on the brass and stuff. So there's those sort of accuracy nodes you have to find. And I feel like 6mm as a projectile choice, especially in an auto loader like the 6mm arc, or in an auto loader like 6mm Creed, how cool would that be?
Yeah.
An AR-10 chambered in 6mm Creed, or a SCAR chambered in 6mm Creed. Now you're talking. That standoff distance now is so much further. It makes 308 look like.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much time went by in my life that I thought, man, there's nothing that beats a 308.
Good old 308.
I mean, I love a 30 cal auto loader, and like, man, that I can shoot 800 yards. Man, look at me. And then someone gets out there with a 6.5 Creed or 6mm Creed, and you're like, wow, like that 308 ain't so hot anymore.
Well, 308 at 800 that's like pretty much the farthest you want to hit something. Like, it's not really that good after that. But 6.5, it's kind of just like, it's just scratching the surface. I mean, so you're talking about one that is really hit the pinnacle or the peak of where it's at, versus one that is like, hasn't even, like, it's on the way to the peak. It's like the roller coaster going up. It hasn't even hit the peak and coming down yet. So,
well, you know what's crazy about that too, Matt, is that so there was a guy I noticed that had taken a 26-inch barrel on a Remington 700, and he used a Lapua 155 grain CNR and worked up a pretty smoking little load for that thing. And yeah, he's hitting steel at 1,000, 1,050, maybe 11 on a good day if the wind's not too crazy. I mean, it's like a guy with a 6mm Creed, that's nothing. 1,100 is 6.5 Creed more, 6mm Creed more. Those shots are not difficult, you know. So it just goes to show there's just how much those things tend to kind of come into play.
Well, I was really impressed last time we were down at the deer camp, and Chad brought out the 6.5, and we put that piece of steel out at that was almost 900. It was like 850.
It was just under 900
yards.
yards.
Yeah, just under 900. And guys, that's not my rifle. Chad said, "Hey, take a couple shots," and that I had never hit something that far. The farthest I had shot was about between 700, 750, and that was at DMR school. That's the farthest. And trust me, guys, it's nothing special. DMR school is basically more of a familiarization, so that you hit stuff out to the target, and that's really about it. But to sit there, and I took one shot, and I was a little off. He gave me the correction, and 2 shots, I hit steel at right under 900. That, to me, and a 6.5 Creedmoor, that's unheard of for me. Like, that really, really blew me away, man. I was like, holy crap, this round is next level.
Oh, that rifle, that's a Bigara B14.
I mean, that was next level shooting, like, to come out of that with 2 rounds on at like right under 900. I was like, what?
Isn't that a cool gun?
It is amazing.
So I know we got into rifles a little bit.
Yep. Sorry, we kind of squirreled out on that one.
That's quite all right, because I think in terms of the pistol round debate that we sort of got into in terms of defensive calibers, I think we made that case pretty well.
Right.
Let's segue back to that for just a moment,
yeah, absolutely.
and then we'll sort of polish off the rifle debate. But on the pistol calibers, I think the main takeaway is shoot what you're comfortable shooting, shoot what you can afford to buy, shoot what is available for you, shoot what works in a gun that you choose to use. I mean, all of those things obviously are pretty cut and dry, right? You know, just choose something that makes you happy and don't really worry about it. I mean, with the availability of lots of good carry ammo out for a wide variety of different cartridges, right? There's no reason to not find something that's going to suit your needs. Shot placement will always be king. There is a lot of conjecture that gets thrown around about which one's better, and some people are always going to have their favorites, and that's cool. I'm a 9mm kind of guy. I carry 9mm on a regular basis, and for my needs, 124 grain plus P HST tends to be one of my preferred carry loads, and also like the Hornady critical defense as well, and the critical duties.
Critical D.
God, they work so well, right?
Let's expand on that real quick, because we do have a little bit of time. So
Sure.
if we're talking, you know, and you know, for everybody, I carry a 9mm myself, but I think what goes into that is you have your preferred caliber, but once you get comfortable with that, you can try other calibers, and you might fall in love with another caliber. There's nothing wrong with changing calibers. You're not married to that one caliber, and things change, missions change, and mission being like, your mindset, not an actual mission, but your mission in life. Like, your surroundings change. But as far as defensive ammo goes, like critical defense, spear, gold dot, like all of those are defensive ammo, but you have differences between them. Some perform better than others. I use critical defense, and I use the gold dot, spear gold dot. Both of those are top tier, defense ammos. But why, Eric? Why would you use those?
Well, so some of them perform different in certain situations, as you said, and primarily what you get into is the barrier blindness potential of these rounds, right? Some do a little bit better in automotive glass. The Hornady rounds tend to do a little bit better in automotive glass in our testing. So if that is a consideration for you, then that might be something to think about.
No.
Some do a little bit better in drywall. Some of them universally do a little bit better in all. I've noticed the HSTs in drywall, sometimes they don't expand quite so well when they get through the other side of the drywall. But if you're not planning on shooting through drywall, that's probably not something you need to worry about. The Spear Gold Dot performs pretty well across the board on all of the different types of barriers. The most important barrier are in the FBI test when you get into the clothing, right? So I don't want to be at risk of getting this wrong, but I believe it's 2 layers of flannel or fleece, 2 layers of cloth, and like a layer of denim, or denim. 2 layers of denim or something. So it's a specific protocol for how they do the ballistics gel testing, and we've performed a ton of FBI spec ballistics gel tests with various carry rounds and everything like that. And what you're trying to show is when that projectile goes through the clothing items and into the gel, okay, is that hollow point on that defensive projectile going to get clogged up and fail to expand? All right, now if it fails to expand, does that mean it's still not going to hurt you? Of course it's still going to hurt someone, but it's going to probably have more of a wind pattern like a ball round would if it fails to expand. Now, there's been a whole bunch of different projectile designs that have come out over the last 10 years that try to circumvent these things, right? Like the Federal Guard Dog. I don't know if you've seen that particular load, but it expands like a hollow point, but it looks like a ball round. So it has this segmented jacket that sort of just smushes. So no matter what it hits, it can't help but just get larger. And it's got its place. We've done some tests on the Guard Dog and does quite well. Mm-hmm. I would say I still prefer the HST to the Guard Dog, but it's a cool round, and it tries to sort of circumvent some of those barrier issues that people run into.
The one thing that I noticed was with the critical defense was they put that little rubber stopper inside of the actual hollow point to keep it from getting clogged up with foreign material like flannel or denim. So that is, I think, to my knowledge, they're the only round that does that. So when that round hits you, that has a better chance of expansion. It's not going to get clogged up with all of this foreign material going before it goes into your body. So I thought that was pretty unique in the fact that, they thought about that.
Yep. So when we look at the debate of pistol calibers for self-defense, I mean, don't get too wrapped up in it. I mean, you can look at some of the performance numbers, but I think if you're just going to generically compare performance data and velocities and foot-pounds of energy and things like that, just the basic numbers of what these different cartridges are doing intrinsically across the board, I think it's also an important thing to factor into your equation, the projectile design, the propellants, and what those are doing in FBI protocol tests and in barrier blindness testing. And there's probably lots of good data out there. I mean, we've done some videos on it if you want to look at them. Some of the videos are a little bit older, but the science should still be pretty valid compared to what's out there. We probably do need to revisit some of the newer things, and that's probably something we can do in a future video over on Iraq Veteran. But I digress. That's another story for another day. But always factor in the projectile design into your defensive, protocol in terms of what you're trying to accomplish with a pistol. Also, there's some really interesting solids out there too, like the Lehigh projectiles and some of the Underwood loadings that use the Lehigh projectiles. They use their critical defense and critical maximum expansion and all of the different types of projectiles that are more of a solid. I think they have one called the... what do they call that? The max? I forget the name of it. But it has. They almost look like screwdriver keys on the end of the projectile. Right. The control chaos, and they've got the controlled defense. I forget the exact names of the projectiles. I digress on that, but look them up. The Lehigh offerings are really neat.
That tumble upon impacts.
So there's a lot of interesting projectiles. Yeah, the Fort Scott TUIs, those are kind of cool. Then you get into some of the kind of things like the rip rounds, which I'm not sure I'm sold on those quite so much, but it is cool that there are cutting-edge projectile designs that are coming out all the time. And I think Lehigh, in my opinion, as a company, they really did do a great job of really making people change their overall thought process of how they think about defensive pistol cartridges. And they've done a great job.
I 100% agree. My leaving thought when we're segueing off of handgun ammo would just be, it doesn't matter what you shoot. You shoot whatever caliber that makes you feel comfortable to your heart's content. I will tell you this. Make sure you're shooting high quality ammunition specifically made for the purpose. So if it's for defense, use defensive ammunition, good quality defensive ammunition. Don't try to use ball ammo for in a defensive situation. It'll cause a lot more problems than with pass through and stuff like that. You don't really want that. You want fragmentation. You want expansion. So yeah, buy high quality ammunition. Stay away from the Winchester steel case that you saw in Cabela's for the Black Friday. You don't want that. That's a no-go.
Lehigh Defense, the projectiles that I was thinking of were the Extreme Cavitator, the Extreme Defense, and the Extreme Penetrator. We have done detailed testing on all of those projectiles. Their newest one, which I believe is the Extreme Cavitator. Let me pull this projectile up and look. Yeah, so that's the one that looks like a screwdriver key. We have done some detailed testing on the Extreme Cavitator, and their projectiles are great. Check them out. Definitely worth looking into. They do good
work, man. They do good work.
Now on the rifle end, there's also been a lot of really, really great advancements in technology for not only propellants but also projectile designs. Now, this could also be a very long talk. We are getting somewhat near needing to wrap up here in a moment, but we could just sort of segue into the fact that defensive posturing in terms of protecting yourself with a firearm doesn't just mean using a pistol anymore, right? Like many more people have taken into heart the need of having a good solid AR or a shotgun in their vehicle as a road gun. Chad and I just got done doing a whole episode on road guns and some of the things to consider. And in fact, I think our next podcast we're going to be discussing making sure that you have a really good level of readiness while you're traveling out on the road. We won't get into that on this podcast, but we'll just say that just like the handgun world, the rifle and shotgun world has also seen some really great technology advancements in the projectiles, designs, the propellants, and just the overall availability of defensive cartridges for rifles and shotguns.
Absolutely. And I would say the number one advancement would be, again, powder. It's allowing them to get much cleaner burn and full velocity out of a shorter barrel. The only thing hindering that to make a really, really compact rifle would be that you have to SBR a rifle. If it was a little bit easier or more common knowledge on everybody to be able to do that, it would be very normal to see 10.5-inch ARs, because with the advancements in technology, you're still able to achieve similar velocities out of a shorter barrel. And why is that important? That's important because you don't really want to be going through your house with a 20-inch AR. You would like to have a smaller package, but still carry that oomph to be able to take them out with a rifle, or take them out, maybe the wrong word, maybe serve justice. Because I told you, when I had to go through my house, Eric, with my pistol, halfway downstairs, I realized I should have grabbed my rifle, but I didn't. My instinct was my handgun is next to my bed, so that's what I grabbed. So it allots you more control when you have a long gun. It allots you, and it's easier to aim. You have longer sight radiuses. It just, overall, for me, I would have felt more comfortable in that situation with my rifle.
Yeah, and I think that, without getting too much on this subject, that is a scary thing to have to contend with, right? Like having to go through your home and you heard a bump in the night and you have to go investigate something. That can be a scary moment that none of us want to have to deal with that situation. We don't have to, right? Getting to the rifle projectile designs a little bit, I'll just discuss a few of the newest ones that I've seen. One is a new one from Remington called their AccuTip, and it is basically a tipped core locked. Okay.
Core lock.
So it is a
Bonded?
yeah.
Core lock.
It is a high performance core lock that has a flexible tip. So getting into that type of scenario. Also, Sierra just released a projectile. I want to say it's only been out maybe a year and a half or so. They call it their Game Changer. So they previously had a projectile called the Game King, and they also have their famous Match King.
Yep.
The Game Changer is sort of a hodgepodge of those two bullets. So it's a match bullet that can also serve as a hunting bullet. So we start to run into these situations where they're integrating the match capabilities of these projectiles in terms of like good BCs and boat tails and long bearing surfaces. Yeah, and a very unique shape of ogive. It gives a great ballistic coefficient, but also in an expanding bullet. So the projectile designs on rifle cartridges have come a long way, and they're always just going through awesome stuff. I mean, getting back to the Lehighs, right? Their maximum expansion, it has an expansion threshold velocity that you can even in a 300 blackout, you're talking the MEs, those things will open up like crazy even at subsonic velocities.
I've seen some of them. They just open up. You're just like, is that real?
Yeah, it looks like a flower petal.
Yeah, it looks like you just peeled it back like an onion. I'm like, that's inside someone's
for small
body.
game or for suppressed hunting. There's so many cool things and so many changes that have been made. So again, I guess to put it to bed, now what would be the best rifle cartridge for someone to consider? Well, very much in the same way that we discussed the differences in some of the power levels of some of these different pistol cartridges, you could also obviously make the same argument for rifle cartridges and then choose accordingly from there. I think arguably, though, most people tend to flock to a good solid AR with a 62 to 75 grain bullet of your choosing.
Yeah, you hunting
even
with a
ball
boar buster, huh?
I mean, I hunt coyotes with ball.
Yeah. I mean, and that's okay because you're not really too concerned about over penetration at that point. That's kind of, it's okay, but you most certainly don't want to shoot ball inside your house. If you're fortunate enough, to have a home defense AR, so one that stays in the closet or stays in the safe, where that's your home defense go-to, I highly recommend getting some frangible ammo. That way you're not worried about, any type of issues with your neighbors or your kids or your over penetration. If you're fortunate enough to be able to have that set up, that's probably what you want to do. But if you just have an all-in-one, I probably would go with a 62 grain hollow point if possible.
I mean, I've shot a lot of hogs with 62 grain ball ammo, and it performs quite well with good shot placement.
Yep.
I've shot a lot of coyotes with 62 grain ball ammo out of an AR, and it works quite well. And I think that the AR, just as a defensive tool, as a rifle, is very, very hard to beat for many people. And there's a reason why so many folks own ARs, because it's a great defensive tool, and they can be gotten at a very affordable rate. Not to leave shotguns completely out of the mix. I know we don't have a lot of time on today's podcast, but I just want to quickly mention shotguns a little bit. Shotguns are great for home defense. We've talked about it in numerous videos on the YouTube channel and even on this podcast. We've discussed shotguns in some pretty decent length in terms of their tactical applications and just how we feel about them and some of our favorite designs. So I won't really go over that because some of those are in those views are in some of our other podcasts. But just related to the caliber debate, the shotgun might be one of the instances where I have to say that 12 bore pretty much is the standard across the board for just about everybody.
Yep.
That's one thing people don't really argue about.
Yeah, there is no, that's the standard. I mean, you have the most options with different types of shot. I mean, that's really the name of the game with the shotgun. You're not buying a shotgun because of the actual bore. You're buying it for the utility. So you're buy it. Well, why not buy the gauge that allots you the most utility?
Yes.
Which would be 12 gauge.
Yep. So in the world of shotguns, there's not really much argument there. I mean, there are some defensive 10 gauge loads, but it's a lot of recoil, and the amount of guns chambered in 10 gauge probably going to leave you a little bit wanting. 12 gauge is the standard, both military, law enforcement, civilian. I don't think many people are going to argue there that 12 gauge is hard to beat for its variety.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different buckshot rounds,
You got
slug
exotic rounds. You got the bolo rounds, the dragon spread. I mean, imagine doing that in someone in your house. Like,
well, we're going to catch the house on fire, but
call the fire department.
I mean, but that's the thing. So 12 gauge might be probably the one redheaded stepchild of the group that you can't really deny.
I'm like laughing because
the effectiveness of a 12 gauge. I mean, 12 gauge, if it says 12 on it, chances are whatever's coming out, whatever's on the other end is going to have a very unpleasant day.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
plus, I mean, you have just the sound, man. Just at the top of the stairs. That's proven. It's a proven thing. It works.
That's right.
Joking.
Yeah. You they shouldn't hear it rap.
Yeah.
It should be ready. But
that's right.
The point is, though, I in this podcast, we really wanted to, get into this caliber debate a little bit and sort of get the juices flowing, because I know we'd have a lot of new gun owners out there, and we wanted to provide a little bit of kind of a basis or some criteria, if you will, to give someone an idea of what we're looking at when we assess the effectiveness of a carry round, of a rifle round, of a shotgun round, right? So there are ballistics numbers we can kind of approach, right? Like the way that we compared the 22 to some of the other, defensive calibers and pistol rounds and things like that. So that, those are your criteria you can kind of look at. What kind of recoil energy do they develop? Can you shoot them accurately? The guns that you're looking at, are they chambered in these cartridges? Is it something you can get? Can you afford to shoot it on a regular basis and afford to train with it? All of these things come into play. Do they offer good projectile designs that are barrier blind and that do well in the types of barriers that you think you might be experiencing in your defensive situation? All of these things come into play. And I hope that we maybe had a little bit of food for thought and we planted that seed in your mind, especially for our new gun owners that might not know about this stuff. So maybe now you know.
Absolutely. I thought it was a very good conversation. It had a lot of information for the new gun owners, or maybe those that are looking for that confirmation bias. So
or a refresher.
Yeah, a refresher. But really, it's just guys that want that confirmation of like, okay, I'm not weird for wanting 40 or 45 or 9 mil. Because, I mean, it's just shoot what you got, man.
That's right. At the end of the day, boys and girls, run what you've got and be proficient with what you've got. And you'll be okay. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you shoot, but as long as what you're shooting, you're comfortable with and you're accurate with and you're capable and you actually carry your gun on a regular basis.
That's huge, yeah.
You're going to come out ahead in life in that regard. I mean, don't get too wrapped up in all of the pissing match of what caliber is better than the other one. Just choose something, get proficient, make sure you can buy it, have fun with it, and life will go on.
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to today's podcast. I really enjoyed it. We have many more on the way. I hope you all have a great week, and I really appreciate y'all tuning in for today's LLP episode. Matt and I will see you next week. We will be here with bells on. Make sure you leave us a great, glowing review on all of the different podcast servers, and also here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, share our videos. Drop a comment down below. Let us know what would you like to see in a podcast. We'll be happy to check out your suggestions, and maybe we'll do a podcast on a subject that you choose. So
that's right. We take requests.
That's right. Have a good week, and Matt, I'll see you next week.
See you later.
Actually, I see you now. Well, they'll see us. They'll see me seeing you next week. But anyway.
That's right.
I see you now, but they'll see you and me next week.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Inc. by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, dangerous freedom. Have a good one.